Hello and welcome to the Providence College podcast. I'm your host, Liz Kay, and I'm joined by producer Chris Judge of the class of 2005. Here on the Providence College podcast, we bring you interesting stories from the Fryer family. This week, we're talking with Dr. Wanda Ingram, the Senior Associate Dean for Undergraduate Studies, the freshman and sophomore class dean, and co-chair of the MLK Convocation Committee. This is a special year to talk with Dr. Ingram as we are celebrating the 50th anniversary of women enrolling as undergrads. Dr. Ingram was a member of the inaugural class to include women in 1971. Dr. Ingram, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
So we're talking the week before MLK Day, and I just hoped you could give us a quick overview of the plans for MLK Convocation, which will be held on Thursday, January 20th.
All right. Well, we've asked our initial guest speaker, which was Dr. Bernice King, who's our first inaugural person to present at our first MLK Convocation. And she has agreed to come back and to bring one of her partners, her buddy, that she has done an awful lot up online with, and that is Dr. Shabazz, who is the daughter of Malcolm X. And we are expecting a fantastic dialogue between those two ladies. They are activists, they're authors, they're leaders, they're visionaries, and they're able to give some credit where credit is due in reference to how they were raised by their mothers after some things that had happened in both cases with the loss of their fathers, and how they have looked out for our beloved community and how they've achieved in reference to looking at things through different, I would say, different eyes in reference to how they kind of approach life in general. In addition to having them here, it's going to be kind of a short day, only because between COVID and all the other things that are happening, the time has been moved up a little bit as well, but we're looking forward to having them have a discussion back and forth with regards to, the whole aspect of what the vision is all about. And then we're going to have a fireside chat, and one of our students will be able to help us with that particular process, just to get some popular and some questions that a lot of folks have with regards to how these two ladies grew up in this community, this world that we live in right now, and what they see is what the future holds in reference to what's going on with the movement and activities, etc. Then we have a book signing that's going to happen at the very end as part of our quick reception. With COVID, it may be a quick one, but at least we'll get a chance to spend some time and hear a few things from both ladies from their different perspectives.
That sounds like it's going to be a really dynamic conversation, and how apropos this year with the 50th anniversary of women to talk about the leadership of women during the civil rights movement and leading up to today, right?
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What are some of the other events that are planned for Convocation Month in February? Because the celebration or the commemoration is going to carry through for another couple of weeks, right?
And as always, we will always have what we call a candlelight vigil, which will occur in our chapel. But before then, we also ask people on the campus to nominate individuals in reference to what's called the Vision Awards. And we try to have a short reception for that as well. Those who have contributed to community and been excellent representatives of our beloved community. So that will be occurring both on February 16th. And then there's the other aspect of student involvement, and that's called MLK Be the Change. And that's joining and exploring different things with regards to the visionary, advocacy, being leaders in communities, things that students have contributed. That one is still a little bit under construction, shall we say, because we're trying to figure out the best way of doing this with regards to maybe some COVID restrictions, et cetera. But we still will be having it, which I'm very glad, because at first we really weren't sure what was going to be happening.
Right. I think there's still a lot of uncertainty now,
Yes.
for so many things, unfortunately.
Yes.
And we're still having, in this country, we're still having so many tough conversations and here in our country, on our campus, about diversity, equity, and inclusion. What are you hoping people from the Providence College community will gain from the MLK Convocation events this year?
Awareness of where they're coming from. I think as people keep having their, well, I describe them as I watch the news, temper tantrums in reference to their rights with this and their rights with that, in reference to inoculations, et cetera, instead of taking a few steps back and realizing that everyone's going through some kinds of changes and turmoil and whatever. And why don't we spend a little bit more energy on how we can make some changes that will benefit us all? It's my global way of looking at it.
Well, Providence College was definitely undergoing some changes when you joined the community in 1971. Can you tell us what led you to come to Providence College? What led you to choose to be part of um, that innovative pioneering class of women?
I was going to be a science major and was. I'm a military brat, and in Newport, I would say the majority of male teachers that I had in my high school, Rogers, were all graduates of Providence College, it seemed like. And the school was about to go co-ed, and it was strongly recommended by just about everybody in the city that I go ahead and apply to that institution. Although I had my heart set on a couple of other places at first. But when I came to visit the institution and I kept hearing, well, this is the first year of women, but this is what we're planning on doing. This is what we're looking for. This is what we're striving for. We want you to be one of those individuals that makes a difference and makes a change. It caught me. And I realized, okay, let me go ahead, even though there were maybe 270 women and a good 2,000 plus males that were on the campus. I mean, that's something that some people would say would be also good information as well from that perspective. But in reference to just the challenges that were there, I was very happy with the fact that being a chemistry major and they had master's and doctoral degrees in reference to it, I felt, okay, you know what, if I do well in this particular major, I can go far with regards to it. So it just checked off all the right boxes at the time.
So you were a chemistry major and there were graduate and doctoral students, but how many of the students in the sciences were women?
Two of us.
So two of 200, almost 300 students.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, everybody knew where you were in the building. No problem there. I never felt unsafe. You always had the chivalry that was going on all the time with folks looking out for you, which was great too. So as being a novelty as it was. And then as a woman, a Black woman in an institution like this, where there were very few of us, there were like, I think maybe 12 women total out of that group that came that first year with us. There were some transitions that occurred up for obvious reasons, just after the civil rights movements and et cetera, et cetera. But there were a lot of teaching moments, let's put it that way.
So let's dig into this a little bit more, please. There were about 280 women that enrolled that first year, and only 12 of them were women of color. How did the college help you with that transition to college life?
Well, we started off with us coming in the summer prior to school beginning. And to be honest with you, with Father Morris and Dr. McKay, who were running the program itself for the Martin Luther King Scholarship Program, which is what that was part of, I was quite insulted at first because I kept thinking, well, I'm really all straight A student. Why do I need to come? Because I'm thinking of it as being remedial work with regards to my academics, not realizing that there's a whole process that one goes through with regards to just, relating to an institution from other ways. So it turned out to be one of the best things that could have possibly happened. We developed a sense of community. We got to know people on campus and off campus, not only, folks of color, because the majority of us were African Americans at that time, but just to feel connected as a part of a strong community. Because remember, we didn't have cell phones and the media and whatever to be able to make connections with one another and social media, et cetera. So you needed to make those connections one-on-one. And it gave us an opportunity to do that during the summer, so that by the time school started, we realized there were a lot of students that felt, that they were really at a disadvantage because they didn't know anyone, they didn't know their way around. And here we are actually feeling like the experts in reference to being able to show folks where to go, who to see, how to talk with different individuals, et cetera. So it really did help us to make that transition a lot better.
So you mentioned Father Morris and Dr. McKay. Could you tell us more about them and some of the other people who helped you succeed at PC?
Well, those were the two that even when I came to visit before even school began and I was looking at different colleges, those were the two that convinced me that this was a good place to come. Father Morris, of course, he had a handshake that would break your hand, but other than that, he was we all kind of considered him our adopted father because he knew and was aware of everything. If we had problems or questions or whatever, we would always find our way to him. Dr. McKay, who was my other mentor, he was a chemistry professor on top of it, even though I did not have him for class, but he was always there and convinced me to serve on the MLK Scholarship Committee as a student representative as well. So he helped me with all of my different leadership types of skills. And what I learned, Father Morris was just there for everybody in reference to, he was considered our adopted father.
And Father Morris and Dr. McKay were two of the four people who really got the MLK Scholarship Program going, that have been honored as Vision Award recipients themselves, which is phenomenal. Do you have any, I'm curious how you feel about if MLK Day, or if you reflect on this connection. I mean, it was there, they were inspired by Dr. King, so inspired by Dr. King to start this program at Providence College. I feel like there's got to be a connection there for you, or a special way to remember Dr. King. If it were not for that scholarship program, would you have come to Providence College?
Probably not. Probably not. And it's funny that you asked me that question. I never really had thought of it that way, but the answer came out quick enough. Yeah.
So what brought you back to Providence College many years later?
It's the 75th anniversary committee. I served on that one because Father Quigley, who was our chaplain back then, so he was another one that was very close to our population of students while I was a student here. He convinced me to at least think about the possibility of coming back to PC. I was commuting to Massachusetts, living in Rhode Island. I had a young family, baby, and he just said all the right things and kept talking about, well, we don't have a real academic dean for freshman students. And I understand all of your work is about that whole aspect of transitions as a therapist, as one who oversees student organizations and so on and so forth. Would you be interested in this position that we're developing? And I said, what does it look like? And next thing I know, we're having conversations about what it should look like. And now I'm realizing, okay, I think I'm helping to write my own job description here. But needless to say, came in, applied for it, interviewed Dr. McKay and all the other individuals I already knew, among others, and realized it was going to be a good fit. There was plenty to be done here.
And I'm sure that a job has evolved considerably.
Yes, it has. It's ballooned.
Ballooned is probably the best way to describe it. So if you're just thinking about your own work in the last 2 years, you've been doing this work since you arrived, and forgive me, when did you arrive at return to Providence College?
1990.
So it's been a minute.
Yes,
it's been a minute.
A while. I said I'd be here maybe about 5 years. I lied.
You know, we were talking about how your job has evolved and ballooned, but I'm sure these last 2 years particularly have been challenged, being the understatement, of course. How has your work helping first-year students and their families get adjusted to college life changed as a result of the pandemic? What were some of the biggest challenges, and what have been some of it couldn't all have been bad. Were there any things that you think going forward you might change that might change for the better?
Because it's still evolving, it's kind of a hard question to answer right now. I mean, I think we're kind of making this up as we go along. Folks had said when the pandemic hit that to come up with a vaccine in this shorter turnaround time was virtually impossible. And yet here we are, and we're talking about boosters and understanding how that particular virus has evolved even again. So I see us as a work in progress. There's a lot of things that we haven't really realized yet in reference to the fallout from what students have gone through being sequestered during high school and then being sequestered while being here on the campus. The whole aspect of becoming a community is a little bit different, because I think that with cell phones and being up on social media and the whole digital identity, that it's a different kind of animal than what I was accustomed to when I arrived at college. And we're not quite sure, at least as I teach in student development theory at the graduate level, and I speak with my students, we're not quite sure yet exactly what it is that we're going to have to kind of work on, because it is still definitely evolving. It's because it's not over yet.
Everything is still in flux.
It's still in flux, and the lack of control, I think, for everybody, I think it's getting to even the adults and the grown-ups, the old folks as well, including yours truly, in reference to trying to cope with, because there's so much beyond our control. It just makes you uncomfortable. And trying to explain that to students when we don't have the answers for ourselves, it's not always easy.
In 2001, you and your colleague, Jackie McKay, published a guide for families called Let the Journey Begin, a parent's guide, monthly guide to the college experience. What are some of the bits of advice that you shared in that book that you feel remain true today for today's families?
Well, having families understand that there is a process that students go through and that they can't solve everything for their sons and daughters, I think has always been that common message that still rings true. And even with COVID, and even with our parents that are trying to plow the road a little bit more in reference to, I think of them sometimes as the snow plows, because they're trying to clear all the snow and ice off the ground before their child walks through. And that's not necessarily going to be the thing that's going to help them benefit the most from this growth and the whole process. Sometimes you have to kind of slip and slide a little bit. And that was the case back then when we wrote the book, and it's still the case right now. It's just more biblical proportions, I would say, in reference to some of the things that they're trying to cope with. But it's still, I think it's pretty consistent. But as the parents are not quite sure how best to deal with these kinds of things right now, even for themselves. So I tell parents, be as honest as you possibly can. Don't speak for Johnny or Susie or whomever. Let them talk, and we'll try to work on it together, and we'll pull you in. But we need to first and foremost have those kinds of difficult conversations and dialogues with your child, and then help them kind of figure it out, and they can bounce those kinds of things off of you. And that's part of the whole value system that I think we have to kind of reinforce with the parents too.
That the parents are support, but
Yes.
They're not speaking on behalf of their children.
Exactly. Yeah. And with COVID and whatever, I found that parents were kind of getting back to that. Well, and I will ask, well, where's Johnny, or where's Susie or Amanda, or whomever it is? Well, they're busy right now. Well, I'm glad they're busy, but I need to have that conversation with the student, and we can talk with you afterwards, but we need to have that conversation together. Because it's getting back to even 9/11 once again, which I think kind of started a lot of this in reference to protecting your child. And as a parent and a grandparent, I understand that fully, but we have to allow them to grow. And the only way that that's going to happen is with some challenges in development.
But each one of those challenges is practice for when they go off to be, full-grown adults themselves one day, right?
Right. Exactly. And you're not always going to have all the right answers, and we'll be fine with that. It's going to take some time.
So, Wanda, before I let you go, I can't resist asking you about your creative side. I'm sure many alumni have come through your office and may not have even known about all the work you do on your own. And I'm hoping that you can tell us how that helped you through the pandemic as well. Can you tell us about some of your creative endeavors?
I have an art background. And originally, when I started talking about college, I was thinking about going to art school instead of a regular liberal arts institution or science institution as well. Even though I could do the chemistry and whatever, I've always done artwork as well. But my mother, I think, made it very clear, and she was absolutely right, especially as a military wife, where, they're just the facts, ma'am, kind of way of raising your child as well. You only like to do your artwork when you want to do it. So you're probably not going to eat a whole lot, because you're not going to get paid, because there are certain times when you don't want to do anything artistic at all. And she was absolutely right. So I tell my students all the time, we have a lot of abilities, but some things we're going to find that they're going to go down the path of being extracurriculars instead. And that's fine, because that's what keeps you level in reference to dealing with all the other negative things at times. And I'm a perfect example of that. I do a little bit of this and that all the time. I do a lot of sewing. I've made many costumes for my granddaughter, and anyone who walks in my office will see all of the different outfits that Disney has nothing on me in reference to some of the things that I have been able to make, and it's wonderful. I make a lot of jewelry. A lot of folks are wearing a lot of the things that I have made. I make a lot of cards, especially pop-up cards, because the science of physics and how they pop up, the angles, I'm fascinated by that. So I make a lot of three-dimensional types of cards. I do a lot of glass etching. I do a lot of wood burning. So those are the kinds of things that have really kept me level in reference to just coping with things and watching less TV and doing more artistic activities. I have a studio in my house, which has moved from not one bedroom, but now two. So it has started to take over.
But I'm glad to hear that your passions have so much real estate in your home. That's fantastic.
Yes, they do.
Wanda, it's been wonderful chatting with you today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for your patience and your time. You take care.
Subscribe to the Providence College podcast in all the usual places, including iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, and Spotify, as well as your smart speaker. If you like what you hear, please review and share with others. Thanks for listening, and go Friars.